I will call this meeting to order of the Bloomington Commission on Sustainability. This is our April regular meeting, and today is Tuesday, April 12th, 2022, and it is 6:01 p.m. Will the secretary please call roll?
And then I just go through listening.
Yep.
Okay. Christina. Present. Joe.
Here.
Austin.
Here.
Me. Colin. Matt. Emma.
Okay, you said Austin, that's my last name, so I responded to that. Is there an Austin as well? I'm a Matt.
Oh, there's, sorry, I don't have the full roll. I'm just going off of, what was everyone's emails.
I can just put it next to you.
Okay, cool. Sorry.
Yeah.
I won't sit here for some reason.
If it's in red, don't read it.
Okay, should I just redo it then?
Yeah.
You just say Matt Austin.
Matt Austin.
Yeah.
Colin Murphy.
Me.
Nyla, Rodson.
Here.
Emma Ferguson.
Here.
Alicia Hardy.
Here.
David, Maynard. Nolan Hendon.
Here. All right, so we do have a quorum. And we can go on to the next order of business, which is approval or adoption of the agenda. Today's agenda was distributed by email on Friday, April 8th, not February. Are there any objections to adopting the agenda as distributed? And actually, I'm going to put it up in a screen share as well. Are there any members of the public present on Zoom? And also, while you're at the screen, could you enable screen sharing for me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I bet you.
How's everyone doing?
Good.
Thank you. All right, so there is today's agenda. Is there any objection to adopting the agenda as distributed? Seeing none, I will note that I would like to relocate agenda item 12.2, which is the Waste Reduction Working Group meeting proposal, from item 12 to item 13.2 under new business. Is there any objection to adopting that change? All right, seeing none, the agenda is adopted with that modification. And we can go on to approval of the minutes, which were also distributed on February the 8th for the, Friday the 8th, forgive me, for the March regular meeting. Are there any corrections to the minutes as distributed?
There's a wonderful spot here next to Colin.
That's all right.
Yeah.
I'd like to welcome both Colin and Dave to the meeting. So, seeing no objection, the March meeting minutes are also approved, and that brings us to public comment. So each member of the public will have 3 minutes to speak. If you're attending on Zoom, indicate your desire to comment by using the raise hand function, or enter your comment in the chat. And then any members of the public present in person, I think we'll start there. Yes, Don.
Last night, we met the Environmental Commission's Wildlife Corridor Biodiversity Working Group met, and at the end of the meeting, we kind of started to think in terms of, we're facing the whole purpose of the thing. The Biodiversity Working Group is to support the green canopy and climate change, mitigation for soil erosion, the green canopy, and the importance of biodiversity, which if you end up with a lot of invasives, that push out all the native species and reduce biodiversity, it could jeopardize the whole concept and effort of all the city, county groups that are trying to address climate change through the green canopy. I've been volunteering now this is going into my third year. I've put in about getting close to 1,000 hours total time working in the parks and with MC Iris and trying to address the invasive plant problem. On the walking from I parked over by the convention center, walked down the wonderful cattle repair lined beeline trail. The city sort of estimates there's somewhere around 1,200. A survey they did a number of years ago, 1,200 cattle repairs, largely planted by the city. They're planted all through the neighborhoods. The number of city trees is actually growing because of the high invasive nature of cattle repair and other invasives. We're looking at, for the city costs, around $1,200 a tree for removal. This is a serious problem. It's jeopardizing almost all of our wildlife, climate, as far as the green canopy goes, and something has to be done. And in our closing discussion last night, we discussed the issue of join or die. I borrowed that from Ben Franklin. And we've got all sorts of environmental groups, both city, county, volunteer groups, and we need to coordinate. One of the things that we're realizing now is an example, besides seeing the great expansion of cattle repair in the community, and is one that really impressed me, besides the cattle repair, has been lesser celandine, and how it's spreading from along the Jackson Creek wildlife corridor, seeing its expansion in Southeast Park and along different parts of Jackson Creek is an example of the problem ahead. Not only is it expanding, but so is the cattle repair. And so the idea is to...
I'm going to interject for a moment just to make a reminder that the public comments are to be around 3 minutes. Okay. We're at 3.5, so if you want to finish what you're saying.
One of the points I wanted to make here is we wanted to explore the opportunity of having the Sustainability Commission join with us in this project. So if anybody's interested, I'll stick around until after the meeting to see if anybody's interested in what we could possibly. We're just right now kicking it around, so that's it.
All right, thank you very much. Yes. And are there any members of the public present virtually who would like to make a comment?
No, it's just Patrick that's
Okay.
presenting.
All right. Then that concludes that section of the agenda, and we will proceed to report from the co-chairs. There are 2 things I would like to report for this meeting. The first is that per the BCOS bylaws, the Najela co-chair and I produced the assignment of responsibilities. So it was required under Article 2.5.2, duties of the co-chairs. So this is a breakdown of how the responsibilities will be shared throughout the duration of our chairing. And we have the signed copy here present if you want to take a look at it afterwards, which I'll scan in and upload to the drive once that's complete. The second item is I just wanted to denote that I got confirmation from County Attorney Lee Baker that voice votes are permitted when there are no voting members attending virtually. I know that was brought up at the last meeting and there was some uncertainty, so we can do voice votes since we have no one present virtually.
For those that are new, can you just clarify what that means?
Yes, of course. So the difference is a voice vote is all in favor say yay, all those opposed say no, and it's a lot faster than going around the entire table and everyone saying yes or no individually, but That is called a roll call vote, and that is required if there are any members attending virtually per state law. So just be aware of the difference and why we're doing one or the other. So today we'll be able to do voice votes, which is everyone all at once. Are there any questions on that report? All right. I will stop the share, and we can go on to report from Staff Liaison Lauren Clemens.
I will just grab this. Let's get over here. Okay, I'm doing a combination of my report and then also items that Matt texted me, Councilmember Flaherty, which overlapped anyway. So I also sent these via email to everyone because there were some links involved, but the Council Climate Committee met on March 29th, and the focus of that conversation was on current sustainability programs for the year, as well as potential council climate legislation for this year. I would expect that our next meeting would be in about a month. It's not scheduled yet. And there's currently a report from ESC to council scheduled for May 18th. So that's just sort of upcoming reporting to council. I attached the slides from my presentation to this email if you're interested. It was basically just an overview of the 3 American Rescue Plan funded programs that we're running right now. And there were some questions from council members about the program design. And then some other items, this is more related to my department, but generally just as members of the community. My colleague, Holly Warren, who's the Assistant Director of the Arts, has an arts survey out, and she's looking to get feedback on how people use art spaces to determine whether it makes sense for there to be public investment in a purpose-built arts facility outside of the Waldron and current existing spaces. So in other communities, there's different types of spaces that are more modular for different entertainment and arts events. And so the survey is pretty short and just looking to kind of get a broad range of perspectives. It doesn't matter if you're involved in the arts or not, just how people in Bloomington are using those spaces, which ones are used, and why they're not being used. So that's a survey. It's attached in this email as well. Responses are being collected until Friday, so I'll just keep you posted on that, but she asked me to share that. Upcoming public meetings, may or may not be aware that there's a proposal being considered by the Bloomington City Council for new revenue on both the City Council meeting tomorrow night and then a vote on the 20th. So those are going to be longer meetings. You're welcome to attend in person or virtually. I have linked the details of the request. There's a whole website available. There's a public poll open, and so there's likely to be quite a bit of discussion at tomorrow's meeting, and there will not be a vote. The vote will be the week following. So it's 2 separate proposals actually. One is for an increase in the economic development local income tax, and the other is for general obligation bonds, and there's a project list associated. It's a variety of different projects. For the general obligation bonds, those are sort of one-time expenses, so a lot of them are for like multi-use paths or various other capital expenses, and then the local income tax would be recurring each year, so there will be a variety of different things that are covered under that. So anyway, you're welcome to attend and make a public comment either night or weigh in via public poll or not weigh in at all, it's up to you. And then later in the agenda, I have invited Patrick, who is with Community Climate Solutions, who's been working with me to get this, there he is, hi, climate action site up. It's still in beta form, but we wanted to show you what it's looking like right now and get some feedback as we add resources and work to get it launched next month. So Patrick's worked with a variety of other communities that have sites up, and he was going to demo the site a little bit and provide an opportunity to answer anyone's questions about the website or how it's working in other communities or anything else that you might have questions about at this particular point in time. So that's my items. Anyone have any questions? I guess I will state one more thing. I'm also with Nolan on the Monroe County Environmental Commission. There's been movement on some litigation against the Forest Service for not following the National Environmental Protection Law and doing sufficient public participation. So the county had opened a lawsuit in regards to that, and it's moved forward. So we'll kind of just keep posted on that. Get an update about that tomorrow. So that meeting usually is the day after this one. So I'm gonna get some more information from the county about how that's going tomorrow and can share it with you all.
Thank you, Lauren.
Yep.
Are there any questions on that report? All right, seeing none, does that include the full content of the normal council ex officio report as well, or did you want to add something additional for that
Let me just check my notes.
on Councilmember Flaherty's behalf?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just wanted to note again, if anyone wants to engage in either of those council meetings, it's a pretty significant revenue proposal with a lot of implications for potential funding for a climate action plan and various other initiatives. So feel free to check it out, and if you're not able to attend, either in person or virtually, there's other opportunities to weigh in. There's also a form at the bottom of that new revenue site if you just wanted to write written comments. I know it's kind of a heavy lift for people to attend a long meeting, and I can't guarantee where public comment's gonna fall in that. So that was the majority of that as well.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions on that indirect report? All right, thank you for both of those, Lauren. We will go ahead and go on to item number 9, discussions not resolutions, starting with the climate action site, which I believe will be provided by our guest speaker, Patrick.
Sounds good. So good to be here today. I'm really happy to share a little bit about the site, how it works. Should I just take it off, or do you want to share anything else, Lauren?
I think that's fine. I guess I'll just also preface, like, not everyone has maybe been at enough meetings to know why Patrick's here, but since, like, I've actually been talking to them for quite a while about getting this website up, the intention of the site is to provide an opportunity for individuals, residents in Bloomington to catalog what they're doing for climate action, to look at different opportunities for options of things, what the carbon impact is, to track those working groups. And Community Climate Solutions has helped set up the site. It's customized to Bloomington, but if you live in Monroe County, there's a free version of the site that's also available. So once we get the site up across Indiana, people will be able to engage with it as well. So I started some initial conversations with some folks in South Bend about, like, what we're doing here, and I think it's an awesome opportunity to kind of get connected to this group of cities that is all working together on this initiative. So I'll hand it off to Patrick for the unveiling.
Sounds good. Yes, it's so good to be here. I'm the program manager with Community Climate Solutions, and as Lauren mentioned, we work with about 50 different cities at this point in 13 different states, but we're really excited to work with you all on your pathway towards a zero carbon future. We know that, everyone has a role to play, whether it's our city or companies or organizations, but residents also have a really meaningful role to play in charting that pathway towards a zero carbon future. So our goal is that this platform can be a really amazing educational tool that can help empower communities of, friends or neighbors or people in a classroom or a faith community to work together. And so this is the platform, and as Lauren mentioned, it's in beta, so we're still finalizing some parts of it, but if you want to feel free and explore it on your own time, I'll go and show kind of the 3 main components of the platform that users can engage with. And those are to create your household energy profile, to understand a carbon footprint of your home. Then you can learn about and take over 110 different sustainable actions that can reduce your impact or create a more resilient community or prepare your house for disasters. And then there's some great functionality as well on the site for people to work together. And if people have any questions, you can feel free to either just interrupt. I know it's on Zoom, so it's hard to see nonverbal communication, or you can post in the chat. But I'll show what these three different things look like in a little bit more detail. And so when you create your account, you get a welcome message for Zero in Bloomington, and then you have those 3 actions that you can explore. You always go to your dashboard when you log in, and there's it's really easy to navigate between different parts of the platform using this left navigation bar. But I'm just going to go through what these 3 things look like in a little bit more detail. So the energy profile is completely optional, so no one needs to complete it to participate on the platform or take actions, but it's really insightful and it's a great learning tool. So most folks really enjoy completing the energy profile. It also allows us to customize recommendations as well as impact estimates. And you just input basic things about your home, like the kind of appliances you use, how often you use them, the different ways that you get around, the different ways you heat or cool your home. The help text here makes it really easy for folks who aren't familiar with the difference between a gas or an electric appliance. And we've had like 3rd graders complete this on their own, all good as well. So it's a really great and easy learning tool that takes about 5 to 10 minutes. And upon completing it, you're taken to your household starting level. We call it a starting level because it's where you're moving forward from. So for this household, it was a household of 3 in the city of Fremont, and they started at 26 tons for their home. And they can see the main components of their carbon footprint, so the biggest contributors to their household impact. And then they have a helpful comparison for how they compare to others in the US. You'll have your own average here for Bloomington, so others in your own community, some relativity here with other countries as well. And then you can actually track and measure your progress as you take new actions and implement behavior changes into your life. So this household was able to reduce their carbon footprint over 50% by participating in the program and actually able to kind of make tangible the good work that they were doing and track and measure their progress, which is a huge component of reinforcing and motivating behavior change, which is a primary goal of the platform. Along with highlighting the impact you can have to your carbon footprint, we also always highlight savings as well. It's a common misnomer that sustainability is costly or expensive, when in reality, especially with certain things happening right now, moving away from using as much gasoline or lowering your utility bills or saving the amount of water used in your household or the amount of food you're wasting because you're using it more effectively and minimizing your food waste. Most households can save anywhere between $1,000 to $3,000 by participating in the program, and even more if you really deeply do. And so the really fun part of the platform are all the different actions that you can learn about and take. There are over 110 actions on the platform that span the big actions like putting solar on your home or buying an electric vehicle to the easy everyday things that we can do that have no or low cost associated with them. And there's a way to sort actions based on your own household priority. So let's say you want to maximize savings and you want to minimize the upfront cost, and you are a renter and you want to make it really easy, stuff that takes just little or no time. Certain actions will come up based on your criteria. There are over 60 actions on the platform that are considered youth friendly. By that we mean they have low or no cost associated with them, and you don't always have to have decision making at the household level to complete the action. So it's really accessible for kids, for adults, for college students, etc. There's really something for everyone here. We touch on the 5 household activities that contribute to 40% of US emissions, which includes transportation, home heating, electricity, food, and waste. And then we also have some great actions around reducing your water usage, as that's another vital resource and connected to climate. We have some great actions around community and learning. So thinking a little bit about what we can do in our communities and what we can learn about to become more informed about the issue, whether it's learning about what a circular economy is or the benefits of solutions. And then we have a brand new resiliency category that has over 20 different actions that get at both household emergency preparedness, so like building your kit and knowing your risks, as well as broader resiliency, so how we can be more adaptable in the ongoing changes we'll experience with the climate crisis. Things as holistic as like connecting with your community or growing your own food. And then we have an action for every single common disaster as well. from things like extreme heat or power outages that explains a little bit more about what to expect in the event that the disaster does happen, so you can be prepared, and thus the consequences of the event will be far lower. One thing that's really exciting about the platform is there's a wealth of information here to help someone learn about something new. Stanford research has shown that there are 4 common barriers to taking sustainable actions, which includes accessibility, affordability, comfort, and competence. And so at every step of the way, we designed the information in the platform to remove those common barriers. So a lot of you here, I'm guessing, are very familiar with LEDs and more efficient lighting, but a lot of folks are not. And so if they click on this action, they can learn a little bit about what the action is, how it pertains to their household, if it's right for them to take, and if so, what steps they would need to take to complete the action. For switching out light bulbs, it's about as easy as switching out light bulbs, but there's a lot of complicated things that people won't feel comfortable doing unless they have, really clear, basic information that helps them understand what it is. Then another component of gamification is we have every single action communicated in points. So 1 point is 1 pound of carbon reduced or 10 gallons of water reduced. So the more points you rack up, the more of an impact you're having. The bigger actions have more points associated with them. And there's oftentimes a way to customize an action. So let's say you find 5 incandescent light bulbs in your home and you switch them out, you'll have a slightly different impact than if you switch out 30. And so you can customize the way you take a lot of the actions. And then we also have a way for you to connect in resources from your community, so like from your city or county or state, whether that's a rebate or a credit or a program or just helpful information. So these will populate with local, Bloomington or Indiana resources. And then Lauren's in the process of, gathering what those resources look like. So I'm sure you all could have some great input on what to add for each of the actions, so people can, either have a more affordable route to taking the action, or there's an easier way to do it as well. When you take actions, they all add up on your dashboard. And so you'll see, starting from 0, you'll see you slowly rack up new actions and increase savings and increase total points. And they can also add up in a community page as well. So you can have a community or a team page. A team could be like a group of friends or a book club or a group of neighbors. And a community group is usually more of a formal or larger community, like a faith community or a classroom or a business and all the employees at the workplace. And on a community or team page, you can see the aggregate of all of the actions taken together by everyone in the community, which is really empowering for folks to see what we can accomplish when we all work together. And then people can post, photos of what they're working on or questions they have or ideas they have for others. And you can also see an aggregate of the specific actions the community is completing. And then zooming out even farther, there will be a page for all of Bloomington. So you'll be able to see the total amount of households and CO2 reductions a year, the progress with all the different resource savings. And there will even be a leaderboard where you can see different community groups or teams in a way like competing for taking the most actions or having the most points racked up for their team. There will also be a neighborhood leaderboard for yours. It's going to be set by the different districts in town. But that could be a fun way to motivate, a challenge in the community for a citywide challenge or something like that. So I want to pause here and see if people have any questions or initial thoughts or comments.
Please.
So we have Sense Energy Monitor. There's many other energy monitors on the market, also water monitors. I know the city has smart meters now. Does it make sense to have an API to bring that information onto the platform so that people can see, have a deeper dive of what's going on, or to encourage more residents to adopt devices like that so they can understand more of where their energy or where their water's going?
So by monitor, it tells you how much water you're using or how much electricity or gas you're using?
Yeah, we can see specific lights in our house. We can see appliances, exactly when they turn on, when they turn off. If we can set notifications if a freezer door gets left open because the freezer is turned on for longer, running for longer than it normally would be as it turns on and shuts off. It's just more data that can help more people consume less is the idea. Does it make? I don't know if you've done that with any other communities, or if that's even possible, because it is a lot of data to bring onto a platform.
Yeah, we have 2 actions. So we have install smart lighting controls, which sounds like it's one of the things you're referencing, and then install a smart thermostat. But we don't have a way currently to connect that data like on a live level to the platform. That's a good thing to explore and see if there's some sort of benefit for the user to have that data on the platform.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, one thing that brings up to me is that it might be helpful as a resource to add something about how to interpret, how to read a utility bill as well, because I know that Duke Energy just changed their formatting to show different usage information. So that could be something that I could add as a resource to some of those actions as well, or like how to access and log in to monitor your utility data.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Most people, their utility bill, they just pay it, and
Yeah.
what a kilowatt hour is, and
Yeah.
all that is kind of a foreign language.
Hi, Patrick. I had 2 questions for you. One is, with the country comparisons, were those averages or median levels of consumption for India and China? And then secondly, do you have any insight into the extent to which these lifestyle changes, these carbon, energy, and resource reductions are durable? Do they constitute like cultural change, would you say, or do they last in households over time? Do you happen to know?
Yeah, so for the first question, the averages there are for per person average. So like the typical footprint for, American citizen versus a Britain citizen. So that's what those averages are, is a per person footprint. And then your other question is it asking about like whether or not people, when they take an action on the site, will keep on doing it? Is that what you're asking?
That's right. Are the changes households make to reduce their levels of consumption durable? Do they last over time? Do you happen to know?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and on the site there are kind of 2 broad kinds of actions. One is the upgrade, the one-time action. You switch out your light bulbs and it's always going to be an LED. And then the other is the habit-based actions, where you're turning your lights off every single time you leave your room. And so for those, those are improved when there's a good engagement program around actions and facilitating new actions. So we have a lot of great programmatic materials that we share with all of our partners, like curriculum that high school educators can run a classroom challenge with their students. We have a Girl or Boy Scouts, like 5-week challenge. We've had a bunch of troops and service unit runs together. We have a teen challenge. So the more we can create a space where people are regularly checking in with each other and motivating each other and holding each other accountable to doing these new things they've decided they want to do, and in a way creating a support system where people can share what they've been struggling with and give each other tips or ideas, the more people will really deeply change their behavior. So that's definitely a major factor in the amount of behavior change that we see occur.
So you have your firm has dedicated, like you devote dedicated resources, or you encourage those sorts of supports to ensure longer term change. Is what
Yeah,
okay,
definitely.
Right.
Yeah, I'll also contextualize, and Patrick was sort of alluding to this, but there's going to be an engagement plan around this. So the site will launch, and you can see on the front page that there's an engagement goal. It's not to just get people registered, it's so that it sort of takes on a life of its own. Because right now, if someone engages with a resource or a program on the city website, there's no way to share if they ended up doing anything with that, or they volunteered one time. And so part of the decision to do it at the council district level was because that's more inclusive also for renters. So I think moving forward, looking at potential ways of engagement, there's a lot of different existing groups that would engage with the site, but then also just some potential other users where we could do sort of like joint campus community challenges in a way that is maybe right now more of the resources are oriented that you could find towards homeowners, and so we're trying to sort of equalize that and say that regardless of what your home ownership type is, there's a lot of things that you can do on climate action.
I do have a follow-up question to that, if I may, that's directly correlated. Is Is the city going to be producing a campaign to be the primary drive for engagement, or is it going to be reliant more on the sort of social sharing component of participants inviting other participants, so where there's just kind of a seed small group and then they have to get everybody else involved through invitation?
So this is, we purchased a domain to be .com. It's a city project though, and it will through the longer term engagement plan. I think different cities are using the site in different ways. So first of all, it'd be interesting to see who's engaging with the site initially, and there will of course be early adopters, and that's probably people that are already doing environmental behaviors that register at first. But I think the goal is to really look at trying to work with groups, and because to facilitate any sort of durable engagement with the site, it needs to be pro-social. People want to talk about it, and so for instance, in talking to other communities about how they're using it, they've set up challenges over a period of time. So one might be focused on we're going to do a transportation-related challenge for a certain amount of time, or for a certain month, focus on a certain type of behavior. So I think the exact engagement strategy is going to be a longer-term variety of goals. There's an initial sort of sign up, and then there's going to be a longer term, like we want to be reducing carbon as a community, and this is just one way to track that. So one of the things that Patrick was also alluding to is that there's a lot of customization that needs to happen to make the site useful with local resources, and so those are being inputted right now before the site launches, but even after it does launch, there's the ability to edit it over time. So if there was a new city program that became available, then we could add that. If there was a new, community organization that was offering something targeted towards residents, then we can add that. So it's a lot easier to update those resources as things change across the community and make sure that it's helpful and engaging to people.
Thank you.
What's the timeline look like on this?
I'm gonna get it launched next month. Yeah.
Christy?
Yeah, I had a few notes and a few questions. One is, as you were talking, I was online and creating an account and playing around with it. So it's a very intuitive website. I like that. I feel like focusing on individual carbon footprint can be really nuanced because there's so many resources and apps. So I think the value of this site is that it can be aggregated and looked at the community level of groups of people and citywide. I wish there was a way, and I know this was it would be much more involved, to link it to some of the metrics specifically outlined in the climate action plans, which says something like 8% reduction in vehicle miles traveled, so that if I self-reported that I was telecommuting and reducing my vehicle miles, it would say you're on track with the overall Bloomington plan. I feel like that'd be a really cool functionality. I'm curious about the language of it a little bit, because it was mentioned as the climate action site, and I feel like a lot of the climate action plan also looks at some systemic kind of solutions beyond the individual carbon footprint level, and so I'd be curious if I don't want this to be a substitute for some of the other things that are outlined in the overall climate action plan. And then just on the analysis side of looking at the data, one thing I'm just curious about is let's say we get X percentage of the Bloomington population to participate in this survey or in the site, and let's say of all the people who say announce, I'm going to reduce my vehicle miles traveled by 20%. I don't want that to be extrapolated to say that all of Bloomington is reducing it by 20%. So I think we'll have to be careful with the analysis of this is self-reported based on 10% of the population who's using the website, rather than using that to inform the analysis in the climate action plan. Does that make sense? And then I was just kind of curious about some of the other metrics and how they would be tracked at the city level that aren't in this website. Many things.
I can answer portions of that. So it's not a substitute for a dashboard, and it's serving a different purpose. So as with the Sustainability Action Plan and the Climate Action Plan, there's often a lot of people contacting the city saying, I'm really concerned about climate change, what can I do to help? And so that's what this site is. It's not a substitute for an institutional commitment, and it's also, I think, difficult for people to navigate a PDF strategic document that's quite long and try to distill that into personal behavior choices. So it also, I think, is more accessible for some people. I think people receive information in different ways, and a lot of times, I mean, if you have a what you can do list and it's 100 items long, it's difficult for people to be able to self-sort. And that came out in a lot of engagement sessions where people said, we have ideas about what we'd like to see, but like more guidance about what would be the biggest impact. So this helps with that as well. And I think it also, there was a lot of youth engagement, both preceding the Climate Action Plan and some strikes as well. So I think that is another audience that this is serving that is maybe not as well served by a dashboard perhaps. So I wouldn't say it's a substitute for that, first of all. And then to your other question, I think that's part of what I'm trying to think about from the resource level. So trying to connect a broader like vision and objective with a metric to what does that mean at an individual perspective, and connecting that in the resources section, whether that's going to end up feeding up into another dashboard that says like this is self-reported information, I think remains to be seen. But what in terms of like the data gap right now, I think that we have is that there's been challenges in the community in the past, and there was no way to track who was engaging with that. And it will also be helpful now that there is a platform to get people's feedback about what's missing, because people can respond to something specific and say, it'd be really great if there would be a way to find out more information about this. Like, for instance, a lot of people don't realize that they can drop off their recycling for free at the county recycling center, and being able to connect directly to that website through an external link just kind of allows an ability to aggregate more information without creating a really long web page that is not super great for anyone.
Other questions?
Yeah, and one thing to add as well is, it is this very, I forget the word you said, where it's a complicated thing, the household individual action. But for a lot of cities, when you add it up, it does lead to either a substantial amount or a majority of the city's emissions. So a lot of our mid-sized residential cities, between 40 to 70% of emissions come from households. And so they do have a really meaningful role to play, but a climate action plan doesn't always help people learn clearly what that role is. So this is kind of meant to be like, great, now you know, now you care, or you want to do something, what can I do? And this is meant to be like a great one-stop shop for that. But we're also working on building out a project-based action category that has projects that a community or a group of people can do together outside of their household. Things like planting more trees in your neighborhood, or volunteering or starting a community garden, or different things like that. And so we are actively seeking input for different project-based activities to build out. So if you all have ideas you think that would be great for people to have access to kind of a guide for how they can start an EV ride and drive event, or how they can do something in their community to make more bikeable streets. We'd love your input in building that out.
Thank you, Patrick. Are there any other questions?
I got one more.
Sorry. Is there any way or any ideas for using the engagement of this and the metrics at the lowest level to help influence city policy, or to basically use all the information aggregated on the site into maybe the incentive or to generate engagement by local governments in order to change the trying to find the right words for this, but basically to influence policy from the bottom up.
Definitely. I think in two ways. I think in one way it shows that the community is engaged and wanting to do something, and we could show, there's 2,000 households in Bloomington that are actively engaged, and when someone signs up, the city administrator, so in this case Lauren, will have access to their emails too, so she could always send out a survey for like, what do you want to see change, so we can gain really valuable data there. But also a lot of our programs help people really think about these things and work to get at the people who aren't you all, who are, maybe concerned about climate change, but probably haven't done anything yet and don't really know where to start. That's like our target audience, which is the typical American. And so this will just help really start a lot of those conversations, because a lot of folks aren't comfortable being activists yet, but they want to do something, and this can be that gateway to starting to recycle in your own home and then getting frustrated that you can't recycle all these things because there's no way to recycle certain plastics, and you start to talk with your neighbors. So it can be really that kind of a motivator for people to start engaging in sustainability more meaningfully.
And I would say, before the climate action plan, well, as part of the initial engagement in 2020, March of 2020, there was a climate survey that we sent out to Bloomington, and it was great response. More than 400 people responded, and a lot of them said that they wanted to continue to be involved. And so I think you have a lot of people in Bloomington that are interested in doing something, and oftentimes all these different efforts are dispersed because there's a lot of different nonprofits doing things and different volunteer opportunities, and that can be difficult to sort through figuring out where you plug in. And I think that also has to do with keeping track of what's happening at city meetings and being able to filter through that and figure out, okay, this is an opportunity to weigh in on certain policy matters that have to do with like climate.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things that following your policy is one of the biggest causes of climate change is production of electricity. And we don't have the control of the mix. Duke determines that. And they constantly want to build more because they're guaranteed a rate of return based on adding more stuff to the grid. So I think it would be fantastic to have some sort of stream where it's keeping news as to here's what you can do. Call your representative specifically about this because they're trying to increase your rate, and the facility they're going to build is completely pointless, but they're just doing it for return on their money. So that's going to be a higher level and probably not the average everyday American. But what I found is once people become aware that the utility's not only trying to raise their rates, but is building something that's going to be shuttered in 20 years anyways, that they are more likely to take action and actually call or email or something to that effect. So I would love to see something like that. So.
All right, any further questions? Colin, do you have one more?
I just have a quick comment. I couldn't resist.
Okay.
This is not to demean or belittle this program at all. I think these kinds of programs at the municipal level are very useful and important. I would just add my own personal opinion, which is that the climate and ecological crises are issues of class power. And one example of that is that 71% of all global emissions come from just 100 companies. And so I think that I like this idea of using these sort of lifestyle changes as a way to encourage folks to get involved with politics, because the climate crisis is a political problem. It's not a technological problem. And so for that reason, I think I want to make sure, I would encourage the city and this commission not to dupe the public by letting them on to think that lifestyle changes are enough, if you will. And so, we should encourage people to become organizers, essentially.
Thanks, Colin. I will add one additional comment in that I am kind of in the opposite way, very glad to see how intuitive this is and accessible is to the everyday person, and I think it will help drive that grassroots awareness that is necessary to make the changes for the corporations in an indirect way, obviously, but I think this is really a good gateway for people and has all the intuition and access to it, as Christy had mentioned, so I'm personally very excited about it.
It's like both and.
Yes, both and. I was going to say that.
There you go.
I was going to say that.
And also, thank you, Patrick, for all of the information in the presentation. Was there anything else that you wanted to cover? You had mentioned that was a breaking point for questions. Was that the end?
I think, we'll probably invite Patrick to come back maybe at a later point when we have a better sense of engagement. Site is launched as well, but just wanted to kind of allow him to come and show you what we've been working on together and where it's gotten to this point. and appreciated your feedback, and we'll use that to make sure that it's more functional by the time it goes live.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited about the Zero in Bloomington challenge.
Likewise, thanks again for presenting.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we will go ahead and go on to our second item of discussions, not resolutions, which is the Just Transition event debrief, discussions and next steps. Is there any particular commissioner who intends to present on that?
I mean, I could talk a little bit about it. I think some of us were here, half of us maybe. So yeah, I think the event, even though there was technical difficulties, I think it was still great. And it sounded like the presenters felt like the community was really engaged. We met with them yesterday. Yeah, some of us met with them yesterday. And yeah, I mean, I think overall it really just solidified that it's something we need to keep working on. I think the big thing that came out of it was that the way that they did it in Oakland was by doing community listening sessions. So they did that for like months, I think. But you know, we can do as many as we can do. But yeah, I think that's really the next steps for us, is just like making sure that as we move forward and we're trying to address the climate action plan, we need to make sure to consider inequality and that there's people who probably don't even have access to the internet. So, you know, that's what we still need to do, and so our group wants to continue doing that. And I offered to help facilitate listening sessions, but I do need help. So I'm asking if there's anyone else, I know you're involved, but anyone else who's interested in continuing with that group, because we would like to keep doing listening sessions, but I just need help from other people to organize and manage it and everything. So that's where we're at.
And yeah, I would just add that we also hope to produce a document to come out of this working group for the annual report. Whether that's in a form of a memo or a resolution hasn't really been decided, but I plan to work on that with Alicia and anyone else who joins the working group. And then I would hope, we didn't specifically discuss it, but I'm hoping in the next year that we can take a lot of the information gained from this event and possibly have some more smaller focused events, focus groups or whatnot, and create something similar to what they did in Oakland, which was to have a final equity, I don't know what they call it, climate ECAP. Equity Climate Action Plan.
Equitable Climate Action.
Equitable
It's their
Climate
version
Action
of,
Plan.
of the cap, of Bloomington's cap.
Yeah, yeah, but more equitable, I suppose.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, hopefully we can, create some robust policy suggestions that would incorporate a lot of different areas. For instance, the tree coverage that you were mentioning, sir, earlier. Is your name Ed?
No.
What's his name?
Don.
Oh, sorry, Don. The tree coverage issue, for instance, is something that can be addressed in a more equitable way, right? Assuming we have maps and we know which neighborhoods are, lower income and things like, and have more marginalized people and things like that. So, there's still a lot to be done in this coming year and more to be done this year before we submit the annual report. So, and we definitely would like to put a call out for new members to join this working group at this time. Colin has already resigned from the commission. Is this your last meeting or you got one more? This is his last meeting. And it's down to me and Alicia and it's down to me and Alicia. We're highly capable women, but I mean, we definitely are open to more.
We're just two people, that's it.
More members as well.
Yep.
So if anyone would like to join that working group, feel free to say so now or let me know after the meeting or something like that. And we don't have a very strict hiring process, so.
Palin, do you have a remark you want to make?
Yeah, just to give you more of a sense of the event, we had about 30 participants, and it was strong participation for
Mhm.
all of about 2 hours. We only had a couple of folks drop off. We had about 2 simultaneous conversations, actually. There was one in person and one virtual. We meant to have them combined, but, you know, last minute fumbles.
Like breakout groups.
Right.
Yeah.
We had 2 council members in attendance, Councilmembers Matt, Councilmember Flaherty, and Councilmember Piedmont Smith, which was really nice.
And
they,
the county council.
oh yeah, and a county council member as well in attendance. So
Oh
that
yeah,
was
I
great.
still need to watch the recording of that breakout, cause I was in the in-person one. Is that on B-Cats?
I'll
Sorry,
send
Cats?
that to you.
Okay,
So,
thanks, yeah.
The one thing that not to interrupt you, but we, as just a very logistical follow-up, they're sending their slides. There's a recording of the actual presentation
Mhm.
that we'll post on the commission page, and then they're also sending a couple of paragraphs discussing the purpose of the event, and so that will
Mhm.
be helpful for anyone that wasn't able to attend. There's been several people that have contacted that were interested. It was also spring break, so there's that as well. In terms so I did feel that attendance was great, and it's a good kicking off to some more focused topical conversations.
Agreed. Just to round this out, I guess, the 4 questions we asked in the breakout sessions were, what do you want to change about your community? And these are based off those in Oakland. What do you love about your community that you want to protect? What are the key equity gaps that you're seeing in your community or neighborhood that should be addressed by equitable implementation of Bloomington's Climate Action Plan? And lastly, to achieve a just transition due to climate change, what types of solutions would you like to see to increase well-being for all? So I thought they were pretty compelling questions. And the notes that Maribel and Colin took, I just copied into our collaboration folder in the BCOS drive for your reference. So. Lastly, I would just say, I feel like we accomplished a lot with just a few commissioners, and the democratic support of the commission and the funding.
And Jonna was on the working group as well.
Right,
for
ex-commissioner
most of her time, yeah.
Jonna McGee, yes. And so, with the robust funding and your support, I think this just showed off what just 3 or 4 commissioners can pull off. So, hopefully use that as inspiration moving forward.
And the survey that I think Alicia designed most of, that we sent to the attendees before, I thought was also very useful. We asked them, I think that's where we got the data, right, that was on that piece of paper, where they actually ranked, I think 4 or 5 of the just transition principles for the ones they thought should take most priority. I think well-being was number 1, or well-being for all, which is the principle that we can all live well without living better at the expense of someone else, which is a very actionable principle, actually, I think, myself, for policy. And, the second one was about regenerative, ecological,
Systems.
economics,
Oh, okay.
specifically. Economic system, so I thought that that's really helpful information as well, and I hope to act on some of that in our upcoming resolutions, so. Yeah, great job on that, Alicia.
Any questions for us?
Any further discussion? I think I'd like to interject with a comment, if I may, just for the commissioners who are maybe less familiar. There are 2 working groups within BCOS right now, where it's basically just a subset of commissioners who participate on a particular focused task. If you're interested in joining either of them, as Rachel just mentioned, you can just communicate with us and indicate if you'd like to join or not to be added to a list or to attend meetings.
What are the
So,
working groups?
so it's the Just Transition Working Group that was just described, and the other is the Waste Reduction Working Group. And we can create and dissolve working groups. I was trying to make sure it was the appropriate term. We can create and dissolve working groups as we see fit as a commission. So if there's anything else that you'd rather see happen, we can make that happen as well if there's commissioner support for it. So with that, any other items for discussion on that topic?
I just want to know who's part of the waste reduction, because I'm interested in that.
Okay, yeah, I will get to that a little bit later in the meeting, and then we can follow up afterwards if you're interested. So that will conclude our second item of discussions, not resolutions. The last one is the follow-up on the Roberts Rules presentation. I added that just because there was mention at our last meeting about the potential to follow up given time constraints, but it looks like our time is all right, but it's not necessary to include this in this meeting. I just wanted to bring it back to the agenda in case there was an interest. So I think maybe if anyone was interested in discussing it, we could have a motion to do so. And then if not, we could proceed with the other agenda items.
I know there had been a mention of training, and I think that you did a really good comprehensive overview, but if there were like specific topics in regards to Robert's rules, we could also discuss those throughout the year as well. If, like, for instance, today when you're explaining the difference between a roll call vote, we might not always have time to do a full exercise, but if there's just logistics, people can speak up if they're wondering about a procedural question.
Just as a reminder, I'll share, it was just some exercises that were pending from the last meeting. Ooh. That looked a little bit like this. Oh. Thank you, Lauren. That was a lot of my name. So essentially, there were just 3 exercises to work through the Roberts Rules content that we had described. So we could take that up now if there's interest, or proceed to the remaining agenda items. All right.
I'm sort of curious about, we're discussing this in our commission, but there's several commissions out there. If there's a way, not that this should be our responsibility, but if there's a way to disseminate the Roberts Rules, I guess, other commissions. I've never heard of them beforehand.
Right.
And again, it's not our responsibility, but if we're talking about trainings and things like that. Just a comment.
Yeah, I do have the resources, the web resources listed at the end of the presentation.
Yeah.
They are available online, which I think would be an easy method.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Of the commission, how many folks have used Robert's Rules in 2 or more meetings that you participated in your life?
Oh, in other meetings?
In other meetings, yeah.
Like intentionally use them?
Like been part of a
Yeah.
formal process that used Robert's Rules, yeah. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Maybe since a couple of folks haven't, we could do maybe an exercise. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you wanna, the reason I suggested making a motion is just to get the full consensus on if the commission wants to or not, rather than going on one commissioner's proposal. I think as much time as we want it to. And in this particular case, it's really just about walking through a motion. So I would estimate we could do it in 5 to 10 minutes if everyone just kind of jumps in, picks a part, and then plays through it.
Let's do one. Let's
Motion.
look
Motion to conduct one exercise.
So moved. There's a motion to go through one exercise. Is there a second?
A second.
Second? This is an excellent exercise already.
Faster to do the exercise than debate whether to do it.
Is
So I'm
there-
excited to learn more.
Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, those in favor say yay.
Yeah.
All opposed say no. Okay, so we will go through one exercise in addition to the one that we just did. There are 3 exercises to choose from. There's one with a main motion with a formal application, one with informal application, which would be more akin to what we'll be doing, though the formal application would be, I think, useful to go through. And then the last one is, I'd say, the more complicated, where it throws in a variety of sub-motions into the motion. Just in a general way, is anybody particularly inclined to do one type of motion versus another?
I think if you pick one that would be commonly applicable.
The second one.
Okay, yeah.
One with a debate, I think. might be
Okay,
useful.
they all would.
Oh, okay.
So in that case, let's do exercise 1B, which is a main motion start to finish with informal application, which is the closest to what we'll be doing and the most akin to what we just did. So I'll give the setup, which is the meeting's already been called to order. We're into new business, and we have completed all of our discussion items on the agenda. So there is a member who would like to do something that is open to anybody who feels creative to propose a motion, but there's a mixed opinion about doing that motion. So the discussion follows, and then there are 2 rounds of remarks that take place before members are ready to vote. On the first round, the person who makes the motion opens by defending it. And then there are two people who oppose it. One makes a direct invocation to the reference to the main motion maker, and then the main motion maker gets to respond to that. So we'll basically need someone to make the motion, someone to support it, and then two people to oppose it, and then just for fun, I thought it'd be good to have one person abstain, just to see what that looks like. So is that clear so far for everyone? Okay.
Is this on a like a prompt or like an outline or? Just
So that this is all there is to it.
Okay.
After this, we just make up a motion. We play roles essentially. You get to oppose the motion or support the motion. Say whatever you want to about it. So, is there anybody who wishes to make a motion about anything, either practical or
I would like
far-fetched?
to make a motion.
All right,
that
excellent.
At the next meeting, we have pizza, but it be green pepper, mushroom, and onion. This is for practice, right?
Yes. So there is a motion to have pizza at our next meeting with mushroom, green pepper, and onion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I don't like green peppers.
Okay.
I abstain.
Do you like
Wait, is
banana
this,
peppers?
I'm really curious. Is this like how is that how you abstain? Like, is this how it's okay? Yeah,
So-
that's what I want to make sure we get the process
They raise
right.
their hands, right? Just-
Yeah, so again,
Oh,
this is
right,
this is
right.
why we're having this example. If we're doing it informally, I would say that was very loosey-goosey. I think it'd be a little, obviously it's, kind of a leisurely way to do the thing, but
But the abstain would come when you do the vote.
yeah, an abstention would happen at the vote. So, and only if we were doing a roll call vote, you would say abstain. In a voice vote, you actually just, you don't say anything. You abstain by not voting.
Is that a point of order?
What's
You
that?
just did?
I would say so, but I would have preceded it with point of order.
Okay.
Yeah, like,
You did the
it was
rules.
basically you made the point of order and then Joe explained it.
Yeah, so I think I made the motion and you made the point of order once things got derailed. Is that right? What we just did there? Okay.
Yes, you made the motion, it was seconded,
Yep.
and then
I was
Alicia made a
supposed
remark.
to, I was supposed to raise my hand and say I don't like green peppers.
So in a very formal way, you would raise your hand, I would acknowledge you, but in informal way, it's mostly about just kind of gauging, is anyone else going to speak? If they're not going to, I'll go ahead. And we can do that informally, because we're a small body, Robert's Rules even specifies that. But again, it's important to do so deliberately. And so then when the questions came in, that was a little bit where it got tricky, because there were multiple people speaking, and that's why it's best to, in that case, the chair then takes the role of going back from informal to more formal to say, okay, multiple people are speaking, I'm going to address these things, and then managing the procedure. So
That's where you slam the gavel.
I was, maybe. So yeah, if you see that others are going to speak, it's maybe best to raise your hand. So, point of order concluded. Is there any further discussion on the topic? Yes.
Would you accept
Next.
banana peppers instead of green peppers?
Yes.
So that would be an amendment.
Okay.
So if you,
Point of order.
Okay, let's.
That would be a friendly amendment.
so in
So I have
that,
to say amendment?
in that case,
Can
you
I
would,
propose an amendment?
you would move, yeah, you would have, that would be a separate motion, that would actually be an incidental motion. So that would be no longer the main motion, we would be interjecting with a new motion where you say, I move that we amend the motion to have banana peppers instead of green peppers. And then we would take a vote on that to see if we want to amend that collectively.
Let's do it with voice vote. Yeah, let's do the amendment.
So with Alicia's comment though, you don't, that was just a comment, she doesn't have to say, I wanna amend something.
I mean, no, yeah, if that was just what you wanted to contribute, you can.
So it's up to you to decide whether you're proposing a formal amendment or not.
Right, okay, I got it.
So I move to amend the motion replacing green peppers with banana peppers.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second.
Strong second.
Is there any discussion? I'll add that I, for one, like banana peppers, and I intend to support the amendment.
So how do you know when we're moving back from discussion to that amendment to the first one?
So I'll do that by proceeding with the example. So seeing no further discussion, we will proceed to a voice vote. All those in favor say yay. Yay. Those opposed? Say no.
No, I think we're supposed to have one, right?
Wait,
Sure.
are we voting on the amendment or on the?
Correct. So we're, yeah, and at this point, once we've taken this incidental motion, that becomes what we're talking about. The main motion is pending, and then this is immediately pending. So the results, so the vote has been completed, so I announce there was a motion to replace green peppers with banana peppers, and the vote passed. So,
So now it's banana
Yes.
peppers, onion, and mushroom.
so yeah, now we return to the main motion to have a pizza party at their next meeting with mushroom, banana peppers, and onion.
Is the treasurer here to approve this expenditure?
Yeah, so how would I respond to that? If that was no, this is perfect.
That would be a point of information.
Point of
If you
information.
wanted to introduce that.
I don't know.
So we went very quickly to the very complicated example, which is good, but I think we're approaching our time limit if we wanted to keep it to one example or allocate more time to it. So I think for the sake of this example and to leave time for the following discussions, we'll return to our main motion. We'll see if is there any further discussion?
Can I propose postpone it to a later date or to another meeting?
Yes, that would be another motion.
Okay.
Is there a question?
I guess I would propose an amendment to the motion that we clap after we pass the main motion.
I
So
think
from-
that would actually not be an amendment.
Oh, really? Okay. And this is to illustrate another point that I want to illustrate, another procedural motion that
Okay.
I'm going to do later. Yeah.
Okay.
Or we can all just clap at the end, and then I'll make that procedural motion just to sort of illustrate it. If that's
I think that would be a separate motion.
okay. That's
That would need to, yeah. But you're so
That would be a division of the question.
negative.
I'm abstaining from the class as well.
So,
Be a
If-
separate motion.
so to go back to the Robert's Rules sequence, your last question, were you going to make the motion to?
Postpone it to another date?
Yes,
Yes.
'Cause
So
it-
if I motioned it, then I need a second.
correct.
And
And
then,
I will actually for this reshare my screen to show you the motion.
and if I didn't get a second, then everybody's,
Dies.
that's just it. Dies on the table.
We can do that if you want to.
Pizza now.
Sorry, I'm trying to share in Zoom. Oh my goodness sakes. So this is, oops. Sorry, did I already have a share up? Well, at any rate, so that would be a secondary motion to postpone to a certain time. So this would be your motion if you wanted to postpone, and then just as we described about having details in motions, you would have to specify exactly when you want to postpone it to specifically, and not just to postpone it.
So to postpone indefinitely, is a suggestion just to let it die?
Yes.
Huh?
Should we call the motion?
Do you wish to make the motion?
How do I rescind it?
You haven't made it yet.
Okay,
so-
then no, nay.
Okay. Okay, so we return to the motion, or the discussion for the motion, which is to have the pizza with mushrooms, banana peppers, and onions. Is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none, we will proceed to a roll call vote. Will the secretary please call roll?
It's just fake stuff. Well, you can
Well,
have voice vote. But
Do you know names enough already to go around the table? You probably don't. Okay, so I'll do the roll call vote, because I have it up.
It's on the website too, it's at the very
Right.
bottom.
Whoops. All right, so Christy,
Yes.
Matt Austin,
Yes.
Sarah,
No.
Emma,
yes.
Matt Flaherty.
Absent.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, so Alicia,
Yes.
Nolan,
No.
Dave,
Yes.
Colin,
Abstain.
Najla.
I was gonna do the abstain.
You still can.
So
Okay.
And then, do you abstain?
Yes, I
Okay.
abstain.
And then I vote yes. So I wasn't able to count the vote in the meantime, but I believe that motion passes something to the effect of 5-2. Is that correct? All right, so the motion carries. We will have a pizza party, and the pizza will have mushroom, banana, pepper, and onion. So,
We did it.
yes.
Okay, we don't usually clap, but I was gonna make a point of privilege that my ears are very sensitive, and so in the future, if we can do jazz hands instead of clapping, that would be much better for me personally.
Okay,
So that would be an example of a point of privilege. It's not true, by the way, but yeah.
gotcha.
Yes.
Kinda like
Is it
that.
very sensitive or opposite?
All right, so I think that example demonstrated that there's a lot of opportunities for talking about Robert's rules in the future. If you have specific questions, you can definitely send those and we can prepare things to discuss, and maybe I'll send out a poll and see if there's some overlap so we can focus on things. But for the time being, we'll let that be the end of that agenda item. We'll proceed to then, we have no resolutions for first reading or second reading, so we can go on to reports from commissioners, starting with discussion of Housing Resolution V2.
Thank you, and I'm afraid I didn't have a chance to write the resolution. I do have a decent outline, and I'm planning to get it written and send it by email to the people who are working on it with me to have it ready for first reading at our next meeting, in which case we would hopefully be able to vote on it by the June meeting. And I'm not sure if that'll be in time for to be included in the annual report presentation or not. I guess we'll have to discuss that maybe in the discussion of the annual report. But in general, I was thinking to start with citing the continuation and worsening of some aspects of the housing crisis, as this is still a top obstacle to our community's overall sustainability, and as well as citing the just transition principles, as well as specifically the ones that were selected by our community as being important to them. And then citing the relevant areas of the housing study that was, the city hired someone to make a housing study in 2020, the Heading Home report, the Affordable Living Committee. There are so many studies and reports on this issue to cite, and so I'm planning to cite all the relevant data. And the major gaps so far that I've identified is the housing provider of last resort. Who is that in Bloomington, right? Who is it? It's, right now it's nonprofits in the United Way. So the responsibility and challenge of the municipality and our government taking that responsibility is a big gap. The next one is a human-centered approach, and that also entails having public accountability for that. So instead of tracking, necessarily just how many homes have been built, which is a market-centered approach, possibly starting to track the number of outstanding homeless people this week in our town, rather than how many new homes have been built. So basically centering it on human needs, and then of course systems-based approach, and then as far as resolutions, so far, a big one is going to be funding this time. Last time, the resolutions didn't specify anything, and it was not acted on in a meaningful way in the budget. So that would be one, but as well as some ideas for funding sources would go in that as well, I think. And then obviously, what we would recommend that those funds be spent on in order to best address our housing crisis. And then possibly an area for staff suggestions, possibly an area for nonprofit housing developer, and for the city to encourage that. And then one thing I'm into is looking at the economic indicators and the data collection and tracking. That could be greatly improved in our community. The Monroe County United Way did recently make a full-time staff position in order to coordinate this, and it really should be, there should be someone in the city is doing it as well. And again, it's really about changing the data that we're tracking so that we're tracking the right things in a human-centered way. And then finally, environmental damage, repair, and mitigation, right? There's a big environmental and ecological impact from the homeless population in our city. And so I think we can make some recommendations as to how to mitigate, minimize the damage being done, and frankly, repair and take restorative actions for the damage that has been done in our community. So that's what I have so far, like I said, and I'm planning to circulate it by email to the 2 or 3 people who have offered to help with that draft. Any questions or comments? Yeah.
Have you identified the zones that are undeveloped for multi-resident housing?
The ones that are already zoned
that
that way?
are zoned for multi-resident housing but not developed yet.
I have not specifically done that.
So if there was going to be an action to
So that
provide
could
residential
possibly-
housing,
Yeah.
where would that go? But yeah, depending on what zones are available would be how far you take the action for.
Yeah, certainly new construction is an area I think that could go in the resolution, the resolutions at the end, as far as like where to spend funds. Also, I feel like in addition to that, we should also be looking at, using the data that we have from the housing study that was just done to see how much housing do we have available that we can sort of commandeer. There's also, the city can put people in Airbnbs and temporary, right? We're talking about chronic, both the problem of chronic homelessness, but also temporary, because you're always gonna have the temporary or short-term homeless. And so there's another idea that's gaining popularity that's actually in the Oakland REA is having community resilience hubs. So like each neighborhood would possibly have an area that would have resources that the homeless or the unhoused can access, such like water and possibly food, but also living space temporarily for people who are unhoused. So yeah, definitely new construction is another possible suggestion. But I think our biggest challenge now is just getting the city to actually devote funds to this in general. But yeah, certainly new construction is one of the possible routes, depending on what the data tells us we need. Because obviously we don't want to be building housing. I'm just saying if we don't need it, right? If we already have housing in the city, there possibly renting or buying existing housing stock is also an option. Is all I'm saying.
Right, but maybe like you're saying, a transitional support structure would be good or available in one of those new development zones.
Yeah.
That's good.
Christy, you have a question?
Yeah, I had a kind of clarifying question, because I feel like the issue of like housing and certain people who are homeless is like a really crucial aspect of social sustainability. But I'm also curious because I feel like there's also commissions that focus on issues of housing and redevelopment, and I just want to make sure that we're not operating in silos, and then if there's other commissions doing similar work that we're like kind of crossing paths. And I didn't know if you were aware of any other groups working on.
I would say that the major city investment has been in the Heading Home initiative led by United Way. So the funding that's happened over the course of the last 3 years has been dedicated to supporting social service agencies, especially in response to increased need during the pandemic. There's also concurrently been, the construction of new units, but that operates at a much slower scale. So as the pandemic has progressed, the issue has become increasingly severe. Also just in terms of advocacy for funding, that I think one component of attending on Wednesday or next Wednesday could be in support of the local income tax for housing security. So if that effort is voted down, it becomes more difficult to identify additional revenue that would be available to support efforts like this. So Yeah.
I think we should definitely
Yeah.
proceed forward, but like in the same way that we always have great representation from the Environmental Commission, I wanted to make sure that there wasn't
Yeah.
like another group also doing similar
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, I've tried to do my homework on this, and plan to reference the house, they did a heading home report, and, I haven't met yet with, Mary, who's in that position, the director of that program. She's been in there now for a while. But yeah, surprisingly, there isn't like a commission pushing it forward. There were some task forces put together and they produced reports, and then it's all basically being put on United Way and social services, which is great because they're obviously the experts who are gonna do the operations of it. But at some point, someone at the city needs to take accountability for this for the actual indicators that matter being tracked and being held accountable for that. So that's what I'm hoping to kind of help stitch together with this. Obviously, I'm sure everything they're doing at the United Way is great, but it's kind of to build it out in a more robust way. And yeah, surprisingly, it doesn't seem it's not a front and center issue, it seems, of a lot of other commissions right now. There is a housing committee that was just formed on the CAPS commission that I'm also on, the Public Safety Commission. I'm not the chair of that committee, and we just met, we're having our first meeting this week, so I don't know how long it'll take to get that committee up and going or what they'll kind of wanna do, but I was hoping that whatever action comes out of this resolution to at least take it to see if they would co-sponsor it, Yeah. But honestly, myself, I think housing is more of an issue for sustainability than it is for public safety. I think it has, obviously it relates to and it relates to so many other commissions, right? I mean, there's almost no commission that you can think of that it doesn't relate to in some way, right? And so that's kind of the problem, I think, is that it's fallen through a lot of the cracks, because it's like, well, obviously someone else is doing it,
Are there any other questions on that report? All right, seeing none, we do have just a few minutes remaining. I think we can at least approach the first item of new business, which is the BCO's annual report discussion. And Angel, did you plan to bring that one up?
Well, I mostly wanted to ask Lauren if you know the actual dates so we can plan it in a way, because whatever we submit in our annual report, and we'll want to give a presentation at the city council meeting as well, and we'll want to have that timed so that we can vote on everything officially before that. So I was wondering, like, if we voted on a lot of important stuff for the annual report, like in June, would that be possible to include that in the annual report?
What I think would be good, I can follow up with Councilmember Flaherty about the climate committee scheduling for the rest of the year. Because there's been so many different things on the council agenda for regular meetings, I think it would probably be presented to the smaller group of council members. And I think June would be fine, but we can align on the dates with that. It's been quite a while since BCOS has completed an annual report, and generally most commissions didn't present any during COVID, so we're kind of off kilter of what the bylaws would have been saying anyway.
'Cause I know on CAPS, our staff liaison said we would want to present during the very first week of June, which wouldn't be in time, which is too early for us to vote on it at the meeting, right? Because our meetings tend to be a couple weeks after, or at least. But yeah, maybe, I guess they do have them they have another one in the next week, so maybe we could do the second week of presentations.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I'd have to check out the schedule, but I would say in general, it should include a summary of the event and then other activities that BCOS intends to do for the rest of the year. It doesn't need to be
Right.
extraordinarily long, yeah.
Sure, yeah, and so as far as the annual report, I was thinking of having it, basically, report on what we've done over the year, as well as having specific sections for the working groups that we have. And so if the waste reduction committee would like to have a portion, prepared for the annual report, I think it'd be great, even if it's like, here's what we've done so far, we've met twice or whatever, and and here's what we'd like to do this year. I think it'd be great just to say, here's our aims, you know?
If I may
something like
interject
that, just-
briefly.
Yeah,
Just
just
wanna
briefly.
Mention for reference, this is the context of the BCOS annual report. It's specified in the city code. And this is what's referenced in, it's also specified in the bylaws that the executive committee be responsible for organizing the production of the annual report. This is where it's called for in the code, and,
But there's no set date either, like,
okay.
in past bylaws have said the middle of the year because that's when the organization committee was meeting, and that's not always when people are available either. So if I am happy to circulate past versions of the annual report as it existed for BCOS over
That'd be really
time.
helpful.
And there's been no particular consistency because it's depended on what was happening in regards to the commission at that point in time.
I think for now, if I may make the suggestion, if we start with reviewing previous annual reports, I think it would be ideal to have it be a largely full commission engaged process to generate the annual report, just to make sure that everyone's up to speed and all participating, since we're all involved in this requirement. Would that sound like an adequate next step from this meeting, and then take it back up in the subsequent meeting? Okay. Did you have anything else that you wanted to mention on that agenda item, Angela?
No.
Okay, because we are at 7:31, 1 minute past our scheduled end time. I will take 10 seconds to mention that the last agenda item is precisely, or exclusively what it says it is. It was just a proposal for the Waste Reduction Working Group to meet to review the CAP waste management goals. So if anyone interested would like to just let me know following the meeting, I'll jot down your contact information, and then we can coordinate that meeting offline before the next meeting. So that was our new business item number 2. That concludes everything in the agenda. If there is no objection, this meeting will adjourn. Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.